Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, viewers, sisters, and friends of Ikra TV. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm your host, Iqbal Vana. I'm glad to be home in your homes today again. As usual, we come to you every Monday evening, trying to bring issues of interest, people who've given some enormous amount of dedicated service to the community, the Muslim community, not just in the UK, but throughout the world. And we bring issues to you that affect us on a day-to-day lives as well. As I say, issues around Islamophobia, issues around mental health, issues around children, their well-being, etc., etc. And today, as usual, I've tried to bring to you somebody who has been on my program, but did not get a lot of opportunity to talk too much about her personal work. She came here to share with the work that the sisters of Iftar were doing with other friends that I'm sure you will have seen that program and you were inspired by the work that they were doing. And at that time I learnt something about this sister who has done some amazing work, has given some enormous amount of time, free, dedicated Sadaqah Jariyah service to people who are in need across the world as well. I was so inspired by her story and the work that she's been doing that I asked her specifically to come today to talk about her work and what motivates her, how does she get herself going to do what she does. Because many people in the profession that she is in don't give that dedication that she provides. There are many people in this field. We all know them, we all need them, and many of them are, do give a lot of time and energy and effort to community service, but not to the same extent that my guest does tonight. So let me introduce you and say Assalamu alaikum to Dr. Hadia Aslam. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving me your valuable time. And as I say, when I heard about what you were doing, I was absolutely amazed at the amount of energy and the work that you put in to help the most vulnerable people in our world, to try and make sure that their lives are improved in any way they can. So Hadia, welcome. She's a GP from Bradford, but she spends a lot of time at an international level in Greece, in Pakistan, on the Syrian border, in Lebanon, and she gives her time to look after those medical needs of people who are the most vulnerable and the most needy in our communities, regardless of their faith, their ethnicity, etc. So Hadia, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here.
Thanks for having me.
And I want to share with my viewers about something about you as a person and the work that you do. So I'm sure you'll find this really interesting, and I'm sure you will be inspired like I was when I first came across this. And if during the program you want to ask Hadia some questions or ask her more about the work she does, please feel free to ring the studio. The number will come up on your screen, 01274 214 299, and we'd like to hear your thoughts and your views. Hadia, I mean, you're a local person. You've lived in Bradford most of your life. You're a GP. You work in Bradford and across the region. I mean, you worked in Palestine, not Palestine, sorry, with Palestinian communities on the Syrian border, Lebanon border. You worked with refugee asylum seekers in Greece. You worked with people who have been tragically affected by the enormous floods and the earthquake in Pakistan. Where do you get the time, and how does this fit in with the work that you do?
Yeah.
As a GP, as a family person?
There's barakah in my time, I think.
MashaAllah.
Yeah. I think when you start on a certain passion, I think you make the time. When it comes from your heart, you make that time. And I think a lot of us who are probably, a lot of the people who are listening will be able to relate to that. I knew before I started medicine, I knew what I wanted to do with my medical career. I was very clear about it from the beginning. So when I went to medical school, and then of course when I graduated, I had made arrangements in a way where I knew that I would not have any restrictions, I would not have any commitments which would prevent me from that work. That was my focus, and I knew that from an early start.
So you must have made your mind up very early while you were still a student.
I think it happened in Pakistan. I was living in Pakistan from the age of 9 years to the age of 18.
Right.
And where we live, in the areas of Attak, you see a very big, I mean, as you do in Pakistan, you see the difference in the wealth. You go to Pindi, you go to Islamabad, you go to Karachi, Lahore, you will see the difference in people's lifestyle. You know, you have these incredibly wealthy people, and then you have the homeless people. And I was exposed to a giant in history who's not been documented enough, in my opinion, called Abdul Sattar Idhi, his work. And it inspired me at a very young age. You know, I remember going for my personal, like, I was, I think, 9 years old, and I went for my tonsillectomy. And this was in Pakistan, to a private hospital. And, you know, in the government hospitals, you see that his philanthropy service, it's existed for years. I mean, it's one of the oldest services in the area. But there is always a cradle outside the hospital, and above the cradle it'll say, do not kill your child, put your child in this cradle. And that's actually, that's the main space where these children are collected at birth, who are unwanted.
So these are babies that have been left there by their mothers?
Yes, sadly.
Is
Or family, you know, who don't want them,
right.
Especially female children. And Abdul Sattar Idhi's foundation would take them away and put them in shelters, put them in orphanages, and then find homes for them. So somebody like myself, you know, you made a very kind introduction, but I feel like if you compare our work to somebody like Abdul Sattar Idhi, where nobody, and he never referred to himself as a humanitarian, which is such an interesting thing. So I feel like, who are we to be referring to ourselves as humanitarians? That's where my inspiration came. And
so what drove you to go into medicine? What was the passion? You know, I mean, you could have done anything else.
I couldn't.
Yes.
No, I couldn't have done anything
Couldn't you?
else.
Right.
No, because I come from a community where education is not encouraged in women. I'm a Pashto speaking.
Right,
you know,
okay.
you wouldn't think so if you saw in the way which I dress, but I knew that if I was going to go against the community and get an education, then I needed to make something significant of it. And that discrimination that you face in the community as a woman, that discrimination that you face as a woman in the UK, you know, it does not matter, or as a brown person in the UK, or as a Muslim in the UK, those things drive you, and you start to notice other people's pain and aggravation. So I decided it was going to be medicine. Alhamdulillah, Allah gave me this gift of this career. And
Subhanallah.
yeah, it's a real privilege to be a doctor. It's a real privilege to be a GP. It's in my opinion, it's one of the best professions, I think, and to be able to use it in a way where you feel like you're making a difference, or you feel like you have encouraged somebody else to do something with the most sincerest of intentions, inshallah, is, I think it's a privilege.
So were you educated in Pakistan, or did you do your medical school in Pakistan or in this country?
No, I did my FSc, which
Right.
is it's not the equivalent of A levels, but it finishes at the age of 18. And then I came to the UK and I did my medical school years here in Yorkshire and Leeds.
All right.
Yeah.
So you graduated from Leeds Medical School.
I did.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Right. So then, did you then become a GP, or?
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. Now the GP field is enormous. I mean, there's a desperate need of GPs in this country, and I know lots of GPs who have, you know, I've known for many years, and they've made a fortune out of their practices, etc. And they've got, you know, like you say, they have a very nice, comfortable living. But you decided not to go with the money. You decided to dedicate your life to help those who are the most vulnerable, those who are the most needy. I mean, I've seen videos of you working in camps, right, both in Pakistan and other places. So that must have been a real change for you, to think, you know, I'm going to forsake the luxurious life that I could have had and do this. Now that takes a lot of guts and a lot of... So you're saying at a very young age you decided to do that anyway?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I think our blessings are many if you look at it that way. Everything feels enough if you look at it that way, and I don't criticize at all my colleagues who have...
Well, I'm not criticizing. What I'm saying, they have a very...
The comparison.
Yeah, very good life compared to others, yes.
And I think they deserve it, really. I think
they work very hard.
Of course, you know, your friends who are doctors, my friends who are doctors, my colleagues who are not GPs, who are GPs, I feel like, if anything, we are undervalued in this country as a profession. And I wish that not just my doctor colleagues, but also my nurse colleagues, my physiotherapy colleagues, they were regarded more, they were given more value. I chose what I did, and I decided to live the way in which I wanted to, because I felt there was an enormous amount of contentment in the decision. and I felt that very early.
Mm.
I think there's always been inspiration from my mum. She's always encouraged a very simple life. I don't know how simple my life is, if I'm being honest, comparatively, like I said, to somebody like Idhi or my other colleagues who I know in this profession. They have sacrificed a lot more than I have to be able to pursue what they do. So I think what keeps me going back is the contentment.
At what point did you decide that, okay, I'm going to do my GP work as well, but then I'm going to dedicate some time going out? I mean, in some of the most difficult parts of the world.
Right.
I mean, working in Greece is not an easy thing to do.
It wasn't.
I've seen, with the shelters there, where people are sort of coming on shore in small boats. And we've seen some famous, unfortunate tragedies happening in Greece as well. We've seen what's happening in Palestinians in Lebanon, and the Syrians who've been displaced, who are housed in Lebanon. We've seen the tragedies of Pakistan, both from the floods and the earthquake. So at what point did you decide that now I'm going to go and start doing this work?
I don't think.
And where did you start? Did you go to France? You said you've been to France, you went to Greece, you've been to Pakistan. So did you start first going to Pakistan, or did you do the other places first?
Yeah, I'd been doing small sort of gigs in Pakistan when I was going back and forth during my medical school years. I did some fundraising. I worked here locally with people in Yorkshire. I don't think there was a moment, Iqbal, where I made that decision. I think it was sort of a thing that I had felt growing up in Pakistan in the villages, seeing the level of poverty and the deprivation. And I think that we all look for a purpose in life, and I think it's not just me. Many of us are looking for a purpose. We're looking for contentment. We're looking for that word, happiness. And does it really exist, or is it a state of mind? So I think I came to the conclusion during my medical school years that this was what I was going to do. I knew it. I really knew it. Yeah, it was a gift. It's a gift from Allah. I see it as a gift.
Oh, definitely. I mean, giving your time voluntarily and supporting those who are the most needy in our communities, in our world, is probably one of the greatest rewards that Allah will probably give you. May Allah give you the greatest reward for that, both in this world and the world hereafter. But I mean, that is something that not many people would want to do to the extent that Hadia does, and that is something that I applaud her for. But I mean, can you give some of my viewers a brief example of some of the very sort of important work that you do at the moment?
Yeah, so the sort of work we do, or I do especially, is I try and work with the local communities. So let me give you an example of Pakistan. You mentioned we were there when the floods happened sort of immediately after through contacts, and we focus on the grassroots sector. We will focus on spaces and places where we know that the larger NGOs, international NGOs, are not going. And for me, it was a very clear decision from the beginning, knowing that there are huge gaps when it comes to international relief work. So for Pakistan, when we went out there, or I went out there, there was a lot of support. I have a very big network of donors, and they're often supporting my work. We employed the local people. We gave them jobs. I created a mobile medical service, and I have colleagues in the UK and a couple of my colleagues also in the States. They wanted to support the work we were doing through their charity, so we developed a mobile medical service for the Diyai Khan region, Dera Ismail Khan region, which I think you're going to later on show. And we were basically daily doing clinics in rural areas where the homes, the mud houses, have completely flattened. And it's not just something that happened last year in September. Every couple of years, because of the poor irrigation system, the poor infrastructure, the corruption in the country, sadly, other issues that Pakistan faces on a daily basis, you see the impact on these very, very impoverished communities. So that's where we were doing clinics, and we were going from basti to basti. We call it basti, those villages or those small settlements where people are living underneath just a piece of cloth because their houses have been flattened. They're used to it, but you see there's you call it compound poverty, where it's been compounded year after year, generation after generation.
Gets worse and worse.
And there's a lot of internally displaced people in Diyai Khan, people who've come from Afghanistan. Pakistan hosts the largest number of refugees. We don't know that as Pakistanis. Yes, of course Palestine is important, of course Syria is important, of course what's happening in Africa is important, but what often I find difficult, it was a revelation for me, was the state of Pakistan in these places what percentage of Pakistan actually is living in these conditions? That's a question we need to ask. And we're very unaware. So sustainability is important. The solution isn't for me and you to go there, to give them a service and then come back. A lot of charities are doing that, right? It's not the answer. The answer is that we empower those communities to be able to look after themselves. Of course, that comes from the Sunnah. That's what we're advised to do. That's what we're guided to do by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But there's so much wisdom in that, because you're not disabling a community when you go in. Then we need to empower them.
It's building up the structure over there. And I think we're going to go into a break, just as we're getting to the sort of the important salient points of what Hadia's work is all about. Inshallah, don't go away. And this is where we want to move to next. It's good, we send money there, but that's not the only thing that's needed. It's building the infrastructure in those parts of the world where all that structure is lacking. That needs to be the next stage. Don't go away. We'll be back with you, inshallah, soon. Take your time. Make yourself a copy or whatever, and we'll be back. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.